Welcome, everyone. This is going to be the first interview that we're going to be doing with the lovely Ashley P. Evans to start off our Mental Health Awareness Week. Ashley Evans is a psychiatric nurse practitioner. She's also an entrepreneur with the company Psych Life Tea, which is a company that is involved in fashion activism, promoting positive messages for mental health. And she's also an active activist against stigma. And so stopping the stigma and bringing a lot of mental health awareness to the public. So go ahead and check her out if you like my gear. So Ashley, nice to have you here.
Thank you so much, Jezel, for having me here today. I'm so excited about being in this space with you and just using this opportunity to shine a light on mental health, mental illness, and make people more aware of exactly why it's so important to protect your mental health. So very excited about this time with you today.
Yes, likewise. So tell us, Ashley, a little bit about your company, Psych Life Tea, how it came about, and let everybody know a little bit about you.
Absolutely. So thank you for that question. That's an awesome question. So several years ago, back in 2016, when I initially went into the field of psychiatric nursing, I noticed that so many of the patients deal with a great deal of guilt about their diagnosis, a great deal of embarrassment, feeling like, they're not worthy, feeling like they don't belong in this world because of their diagnosis. And that always really tugged on my heart, like, man, how can we help people not feel this way, especially our young people? They have their whole lives ahead of them. Well, I didn't really know what to do. At that point, I was, still very pie in the sky. What can we do? But I stayed there about a year, and, that feeling of wanting to do more stayed with me. So I moved to Texas. And when I moved to Texas, I started working with veterans. And I noticed one thing, and it's so odd, but I noticed that although I was working with adults, who were veterans, they suffered with the same stigma that the adolescents suffered with, feeling like they were unwanted, feeling like they were unloved and not worthy of love, affection, feeling like they're not worthy of joy, of, anything positive. And again, I thought to myself, wow, this is really something that, I thought at first I thought it was just significant and a finding for the adolescent population. But in actuality, this is how so many people feel when they are diagnosed with a mental illness. And so I thought, again, what can we do to kind of help this phenomenon, to move the needle so that they understand, no, we don't think down on you. We're your biggest supporter. We want to encourage you. We want to help you walk through this time with you until you get to the other side and cheer you on. And so that's the premise for why the Psych Life Tea Company was created. And I personally, just to give you a little bit of my personal story, years ago, 16 years ago, after I had my first child, I experienced postpartum depression. And in that experience, Jezel, I personally can tell you about the thoughts that went through my head that were rampant. And those thoughts were that I was, a pariah. I was different. I, could not be loved. I was weak. How could you let this happen? Like, pull yourself up, get over it. I was very ashamed, and I did not want anyone to know that I was suffering with depression, in a period of time in my life where I should be so excited about having a baby. I was actually truly very depressed once I got home. And I was 23 years old, you know, and here it is. I have all these hormones in my body, and they're just all over the place, and I don't understand what's going on. Because at that time, I was not a nurse, right? And so what actually happened is that thankfully my husband recognized the signs in me that I wasn't quite, you know, the same, and that the Ashley that he knew and loved was really not there. You know, I had become isolative. I was very tearful, crying all the time. The cup, the glass was always half empty. I was suspicious of everyone. These are the things that runs through the minds of those who have mental illnesses oftentimes.
Yeah.
You know, trust anyone. And so as I recalled how I felt, you know, with mental illness and being diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and I started saying how guarded my patients were, I recognized that those feelings I felt are what they feel too, right? And so that's why I came up with this concept, because I was thinking to myself, what if people began to understand just how courageous we think they are for having to battle, you know? And I thought to myself, it would be so awesome if whenever you step onto an inpatient unit or into a clinic or into a hospital, any type of mental health space, what if you were greeted with beautiful, bright colors, you know, on people's clothes, and, you know, people just adorned with messages of hope, messages that make you think to yourself, oh my God, I am at the right place. Maybe I can get help here. So that's essentially why I created Psych Life Template.
Wow, and it's been very powerful as far as getting the message out to others. I see you're wearing a shirt. I believe that's to never give up. Yeah, see, that's a wonderful message. And I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned that's very powerful, and I think that a lot of people can relate with. I believe that the audience can relate to some of the fears that you were talking about, and the stigma. Unfortunately, the stigma is real, and you were feeling a lot of the shame. You mentioned that you were feeling like, you know, I should be happy. Why am I this way? And a lot of times it's that stigma or the shame that we start feeling when we start getting depressed that stops us from getting help. So it was really good of your husband to recognize those symptoms, because it could have gotten worse. And so I'd like to just, you know, pause for a moment to tell the audience that it's okay if you're suffering with depression, with anxiety, with feeling uncomfortable, with trying to figure out who you are in this world. We are all on the same spectrum of humanity, and we all suffer in similar ways. Just sometimes some of us go off on this side of the spectrum versus the other. And it's very important to know that there are mental health care providers out there like Ashley, like myself, and many others that are here to help you along your mental health care journey. So please don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. That is the first step. And thankfully, Ashley did have somebody in her corner to help her make that way and to take that first step. So sometimes people don't have that person in their corner. And if that's you, I'm giving you the courage right now to go on and take that first step and ask for help. And I'm going to be putting the National Suicide Hotline down in the chat or in the description box, and also putting in the number to the crisis text line, which have counselors available 24/7 for you to reach out to make that first step. Okay, so what I'd also like to touch on here is the fact that you're a content creator. You have this company, Psych Life Tea, which is amazing, and it comes from such an amazing and powerful, impactful story. but you also take it to the next level. You just don't stop there. You have a big following on LinkedIn. You just started a YouTube channel that's slowly growing. So you have this content that you're putting out, Instagram. How does taking care of your mental health, or how does that impact being a content creator? How do you deal with the struggle of that?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Before I answer that question, I want to go back to something that I feel like is extremely important for the listeners to hear.
Yeah.
And that is this. I did not wake up wanting to seek mental health care. I did not. I battled with my husband about, there's nothing wrong with me. Okay. And not only that, but growing up, I'm 40 years old. So growing up in the time that I grew up, we definitely did not talk about mental health as much as we do now. And believe me, we still have a ways to go, right? But back then, 25, 16 years ago when I had my son, but even before that, 25 years ago when I was 15, we weren't talking about that. So I was not raised understanding how important it was to take care of your mind in terms of mindfulness and mental health and, how to keep mental illness at bay with simple things like going outside and absorbing the morning sun. Those were not things that I learned, as a child. And so when you fast forward to the time that I had my own son, the reason why I felt it was so strange for me to be going through this is because I had no point of reference. Does that make sense? I didn't even know what it was. Right. And when you don't know what something is and you have it can be very scary. So I'm so glad that you took a moment and pause to talk about the resources that are available and to inspire listeners and to give them hope. That's extremely important. But we understand that it might take some time. I hope that time that it takes for you is very little, because you have to put your mental health and your well-being first beyond anything else other than God. Okay? So then let me fast forward to content creating, which I absolutely adore. Okay?
And you're very good at.
Thank you so much.
And if you don't already follow her, go to LinkedIn and follow her on LinkedIn. And I'll make sure to put that down in the description and also link to her channel, okay? So that way you guys can see the wonderful content that she is creating.
Thank you so much. Well, as a psychiatric provider, a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, just because I am a professional does not mean that I live a very perfect life, right? I don't. And the thing of it is, no one does. That's another lie that we tell ourselves, that the things that we have going on in our own lives are worse than anyone else's life. It's just an illusion, friends, because we all have our cross to bear. We all have something that we are going through. No one's life is perfect. And so when I write my content, I never post anything that's outside of my own lived experience, ever. Okay? I just am not going to do it. So it makes it very natural for me to carry on a conversation and respond to those who have commented on my post, because I'm not pulling something out of the thin blue sky and saying, oh, let me post about this today. I wish that I could be one of those content creators who had all of my content created for the next month. It just doesn't happen like that for me. I literally, throughout my day, I take in what's happening throughout my day. My interchanges, my exchanges with people the things that I watch on television, the things that people say. It just depends on those things that propels the content creation, if you will. Because I was having a conversation, I'm going to give you a perfect example. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and I was sharing with them about my depression.
Yes.
And I put my in quotation marks. And then it got all over me. I was like, man, why am I taking ownership of this thing?
Yeah.
To be very honest and transparent with you all, since I had postpartum depression, I have been on a mental wellness journey dealing with that depression. And thankfully, I am stable now, but it took a long time to get there, right? And when I was having this conversation with this individual and I was sharing my journey, I took ownership of the depression like it was mine. And when I did that, it really blew my mind. And I stopped, all of a sudden, very abruptly. And I said, wait a minute, that's not mine.
That's right.
I said, the depression, my experience with the depression.
Right.
And instantly I thought to myself, how many people do this? How many people, take ownership of things? My heart attack, my cancer, my this, my that. No, we have to, really allow that to not be a part of our identity. That is not who you are. Okay.
Absolutely.
And when I started thinking about that, I said, my God, I have to share this with LinkedIn. Now, it was literally 6 p.m., right? There's nobody on LinkedIn around 6 p.m., 5 p.m. But you know what? It didn't matter to me. I understand the perfect time to post on LinkedIn according to, the content creators is Tuesday morning. But you know what? It is far greater to me than metrics to post something that moves people, inspires people, and something that people need to hear. It does not matter to me what time of day it is. What matters to me are the souls and the eyes that are following that and who read it. Because who needs to read it is who will read it. That's how I feel about it. So that's how I do my content creation. I talk about the things that we see going on every day. For instance, today, one of my creations was about the deaf community, because that community is so forgotten about in terms of mental health. And it was on my heart. I have a sister who's deaf. It was on my heart to create a beautiful design for her. And when I created that design for her and I started reading about mental health in the deaf community and how at risk this population that my sister is in, how at risk they are for mental health or mental illnesses. And I didn't even realize that, but it totally makes sense. I mean, imagine being in a world where you don't hear anything. You've lost one of your senses and you literally depend on people to tell you what's going on. You depend on those people to tell you the truth. It's a very vulnerable, if you will, situation that you have to be in every single day of your life. So, I mean, that just got on my heart. And that's why the post that I made this morning, after creating that design for her this week, I was like, because at first I was just creating a design for her. I wasn't even going to post it. And once I started reading about, the scarcity of mental health professionals who know and understand how to communicate with people who are deaf, I said, no, I have to talk about this on my platform. So that's how I come up with that content.
Yeah, and it's very powerful. And you know, in your messages that you do post, you can tell that it's authentic. You can tell that it's coming from a place of love and experience and a lived experience, which is why I believe so many people are drawn to you, and your community will continue to just grow because of the type of content that you're putting out. Now, does this ever weigh on you coming up with the content on a regular basis? Do you ever find yourself falling into a slump? And if you do, what do you do to get yourself out of that?
Oh my God, what a good question. Well, to be very honest with you, I am very task oriented. I don't know if I have ever shared this with you before, Giselle, but my God, I love metrics. I love, like, coming up with content that people love to read, love to share, that people crave. And what I found is that when I spend a long time on creating a piece of content, like if I spend an hour on it, I might as well throw it away and not even post it. Isn't that weird? Yeah. However, if I spend 5, 10 to 15 minutes, no more than 15 minutes, and post it, those are things that people are going to identify with. You know why? It's because it's off the dome. You don't look up, facts, figures, you don't fact check. You're just saying what's on your heart. Those are the posts that do extremely well. Does it ever make me feel like I'm in a slump when I've spent lots of time on curating content that does not do well? Yeah, I mean, I'm human. I mean, it gets to you and you think to yourself, man, I spent, 2 hours with that content and no one liked it. And it can make you feel, I don't know, it can make you feel down for a moment, but I'm one of those people like, okay, that one didn't work. Well, let me come up, it inspires me to come up with something better so that I can continue to move the needle for mental health. When I see, my metrics and that metric, if it says 2,000 views, and I really feel like there should be more views on this, what I would do, and this is just a suggestion to throw out to people who are interested in curating, is to write it down, look at what you talked about, and in 3 to 4 months, revisit that very same post and recreate it by giving it a different spiel. And you will find that. And when you do that different spiel, do it in no more than 10 to 15 minutes. And you will find that it is a post that many people identify with and comment on and share and give you all sorts of reactions to. Furthers your platform, especially in this space for mental health. It's so important to just further that platform as much as
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that, definitely what you're saying, with the content creation, sometimes we can get so stuck on the metrics and so stuck on the algorithm of whatever platform we're working on. But that advice of just being authentically you and letting it come from the heart is something that I think a lot of people who are content creators out there maybe struggle with. And so it's good that you're letting them know that it's okay to be authentically you, because people, that's what they want. They want to connect with someone who is giving them and showing them heart to heart, instead of someone who's just perhaps throwing facts out there. There's no communication or no relationship happening. It's just a one-way type of dialogue. And so having this open dialogue and opening your life up the way that you do allows people to also know that they're not alone. And so that's another way that I believe that you advocate for people, because of the fact that your content and what your life experience is, your shared experience, a lot of people relate to that. And I think that's very important. And I think that that is something also for people to understand, is that, you know, there's hope in healing. And also with healing, there's a place of altruism that occurs, where after the healing takes place, you want to give back. You want to share your experience because you don't want others to suffer the way you did. And so that is something that you can absolutely do if you have a story that, you know, something that has happened in your life. Sharing it on a platform like LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever platform you're using, can be very powerful for your healing, but also very powerful for the audience that you're sharing it with, because you never know whose life you could be touching and making.
You're so right, Jezel, and that brings me to this point that I would love to make for your listeners and your audience, and it's this: authenticity matters. So what Jezel just said was spot on, and I'll tell you a very personal story of why I know that is super important. When I first started my journey in LinkedIn in December, I did it in a very haphazard way. I did not research how to post in LinkedIn. I did not research what types of things I wanted to even talk about in LinkedIn. I only joined the platform to bring visibility to my business on a very surface level, very surface, because I did not understand the power of the platform and the power of connections, right? Well, fast forward after about 3 to 4 weeks of posting, and literally no one was, kind of interacting with the content. It's because the content was solely about my company. I didn't know that I should be talking about something else, right? And that was going to draw people to my company. I didn't realize that because, again, I'm a nurse. I'm not, a person who's been in content creation for years and years. So after my husband started looking at my posts, he said, well, dear, I know exactly why no one's talking or responding on your messages. And I'm like, tell me, And he goes, because that's not you.
Yeah.
I was like, what? You're not showing yourself on LinkedIn. You're not showing who you are on LinkedIn. So why would someone want to engage with you on a post when it's very superficial? Mm-hmm. It does not have anything about Ashley. It has a very surface level, this is what I have, buy it. No, you cannot do that, because people don't want to interact with people who are just trying to sell them something. And you know what? It's very unnatural for me to be a salesperson. That's not me. And so once he told me that, I totally did a 180. He said, you have to talk about what inspired you. And when he said that, I was like, oh my God. He said, what inspires you? I said, you already know, mental health. He said, that is what you have to talk about every single day.
Yeah.
You will be the resident expert. You will be a person who people long to interact with. And I was like, still like not really understanding, but he's been in LinkedIn for so many years, right? And once I changed how my content was created and stopped, trying to just post pictures of shirts, notebooks, and mugs,
Mhm.
And I was only giving people meat and potatoes. This is why mental health matters.
Yeah.
Is, the reason why many people in the Black community are not seeking mental health is because there aren't enough people who look like them in the mental health professional space. I mean, I just started, you know what I'm saying, talking about very real subjects that people need to hear, because that is what moves that needle. If no one ever buys a tea, a notebook, or mug, I don't care.
Yeah.
Because what I care about the most is people getting good quality care so they can live a happy, joyous life, so they can get to the other end of what they're going through.
That's right. That's right. And you do it very well. And so definitely, I really appreciate you being here. And just one last thing that you touched on that I think was very powerful, and I don't want to gloss over, is the fact of you mentioned the Black community. And you mentioned, some of the struggles, the barriers that they face. And that's, again, part of the stigma, part of the cultural norm that is prevalent not only in the Black community, but also in the Hispanic Latino community. I see it, in my own culture as well, that there is this stigma of getting mental health treatment. It's looked down upon, like you mentioned earlier. It's not talked about, and so those are the stigmas that we're breaking right now, this moment. Those are the stigmas that Ashley's company is fighting against. Putting out that positive message to others is what brings and spreads the word out to everybody else, to let you know that it's okay. It's okay if you're struggling. There's hope out there. And that's what I would like all of you to get from this series and this month of mental health awareness. Each week, we're going to be featuring a different content creator so that you can hear their backstory and so that you can understand a little bit about mental health awareness, and also to better understand that you are not alone and there is hope out there for you. Any last words, Ashley?
Well, I think the way you ended it was just so spot on. I am going to do my very best every single day to advocate for those who have suffered in silence. Because quite frankly, it's a place that no one wants you to be in. We want you to come forth. We want you to talk about what you're going through. We don't want you to isolate. We don't want you to suffer alone, and for you to allow those thoughts in your head to continue. We don't want you ruminating. There is help for you. There is help for your family members, and there is help for your friends. We want you all to come forth because we know that your life is valuable. You matter. There is a reason that you are here on this earth. But you will never see it if you continue to let the mental illness that you battle be your identity. We want you to just understand it is a diagnosis. It is not your identity.
Amen to that.
We urge you, please, seek counsel or therapy locally. And if you don't want to do it locally, face to face, there are so many options that are tele-psych.
Yep.
Therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And Jezel has a wonderful practice herself there in the state of Florida, where she is providing mental health, professional mental health services for those who live in Florida. So I am so very thankful for what you are doing, Jezel, with level-headed mind.
Thank you, Ashley. I really appreciate that. Absolutely. And thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing your story and offering hope to those who feel that there is no hope, and for offering hope to those who are struggling in their mental health care journey. Till next time.
Until next time, until the stigma is no more.
That's right. We'll see you guys next week.